It is like Alice in Wonderland. Woo!
I don't know what you all showed up for. I mean, Brandy thinks she's going to do this thing and she thinks people are going to show up, but I don't know. I mean, she had 117 people sign up and there's only 63 people here. And she was trying to print out something on her printer, and ironically, the yellow toner wasn't working. So she might as well just crawl back into bed. Because I mean, really,
Well,
who does she think she is? Hello. That was a tiny snapshot of my own inner critic. And let me make space for myself now that we got them out of the way. Welcome, welcome. I'm thrilled to see your faces. I would love to see where you are in the world. A couple folks have already mentioned that. And we already know it's a fantastic session because we have two Veroniques. We have that bouquet of Veroniques. So everything else is a win. So, awesome. Awesome. Yay. Thrilled to see you all. I would absolutely love to welcome to the stage Heather Martinez. And, oh, Jenny just disappeared for me 1 second. Let me get back to Jenny.
Let me add her. I just found her.
Oh, thank you.
I'm
And
here.
Jenny Mustafa Julak, my beautiful co-leaders of this session about the inner critic. And very simply, the first thing I wanted to ask you both is just to introduce yourself and share why the inner critic is important in your work and why you talk about it. That was one thing we realized we all had in common, and exactly why we came together today to share our favorite tools with you.
Madame.
Is that for me?
Yes, ma'am.
Go for it, Heather.
Yeah, well, so I'm a human, so I have an inner critic. Hello. And I've been an artist most of my life, and I find that when you're creating alone and you're thinking about all the steps and the process, that inner critic comes in and likes to keep you company. And so I've kind of struggled, battled, and not liked it for a long time. And in the last couple of years, I've learned how to just embrace it, hold hands with my inner critic. And I found all sorts of wonderful ways to do that. At first, I thought there was only one way. And then I met Jenny and I know Brandy and went, wow, there's so many ways. So I'm excited to be here today and to be a part of this group and to hear from all of you too. Yeah.
My name is Jenny Mustafa Julak, which is ridiculous. Just call me Jenny. And I'm half of Jenny and Meredith. My wife and I run a coaching practice out of our Airstream trailer that we're in right now. And I'm also the author of a book about the inner critic, which I didn't want to write because I wasn't supposed to write a book about the inner critic. And me and the inner critic went for a roller coaster ride in the meta experience of writing a book about her. So I'm really excited to share kind of my unique kind of spin. I use a lot of humor and a lot of language in my work, and very intentionally like to talk about this ridiculous voice that lives in the back of our heads who tells us we suck.
Fantastic. Not the telling us we suck part,
Yes,
but the
yes. So yeah, every other
fantastic
part.
the work you do.
Mhm.
That you wrestled Hilda and the book, and you
Yes.
won, and we're the beneficiaries of that. Awesome. And I'm Brandy Agerbeck, and I am the type that when folks would talk about their inner critic, saying that their inner critic told them they couldn't do something, I was always a little bit like, huh. Wow, okay, that their inner critic stopped them from taking action. Because it just turns out my inner critic, their voice is, I have to do 3 times more than anyone else, and I have to do it impeccably. So my personal inner critic wasn't about stopping me from starting, it was just ramping me up. So whenever I hear folks talking about that inner critic and how loud that voice is in their head and how much it slows them down or stops them from doing amazing things, I realize, I gotta think more about what the purpose of that voice is and how can we shift that voice. And what I'm excited about is all 3 of us are going to share different perspectives and different tools that changes that relationship to that inner critic. And I think to Heather's point, hi, I'm human. I have an inner critic. We all do. This isn't about evicting the inner critic or killing the inner critic. It is absolutely about taking a closer look at that character and your relationship so you can shift that relationship and hopefully quiet that inner critic down. So that's definitely why I'm here. And I'm so thrilled Heather and Jenny have joined me. And I'm beyond thrilled that you all are here with us together. So I think it's time to hand it over to Jenny to talk about the quickly, just for anyone who has their PDF. If you weren't able to print out the PDF for today's session, do not worry, just grab some paper and pen. This is a hands-on workshop. This is the time and space for you to take that look at that relationship. So instead of us piling a whole bunch of things on a to-do list that you'll get to later, nobody needs that. This is our space and our time to look at this relationship and use a few tools to shine a light on maybe that shadow self or that inner critic self. So definitely grab your PDF, and I think I should welcome you to page 2, where you'll get to see these wonderful Hildas that Jenny's going to share with us. Please take it away, Jenny.
Hi, so this is Hilda, as you can see on your worksheet with the handy dandy Hilda cheat sheet. It took me a very long time to be able to say handy dandy Hilda cheat sheet. It's really quite fun. So Hilda is the name that I gave to the inner critic. I am not the only coach in the world who has named their inner critic. That's pretty basic. But I kind of developed an inexhaustible obsession with understanding Hilda and what she's all about, where she comes from, what's her story. And I'm really, really proud of this work, and I'm excited to share it with you a little bit here. So who is Hilda? This is my take on it. Hilda is the name I gave to that irksome inner naysayer who lives in my brain, who's on a mission to keep me safe, stuck, and stifled. If I would just listen to her, I will never fail again. I'll never succeed again, and she's totally cool with that too, but I would never fail again. I'll never risk again. I'll stay safe in my comfy little comfort zone for as long as I can. And so I started using Hilda as a tool, and she's a tool in every sense of the word. I started using her as a tool in my coaching practice with my coaching clients one-on-one. And it wasn't really the thing I wanted to be known for, of course, because who wants to be known for such a negative thing? I'm a coach, I'm a positive, aspirational kind of broad. But the truth was that this concept of Hilda and naming her Hilda, which apologies to anybody here named Hilda, or if anybody here's favorite aunt or grandmother's name is Hilda, you can call yours Jenny, so we're even, okay? Hilda was this wonderful tool to talk about some of the things that we don't usually talk about. So in that inexhaustible obsession I mentioned, I realized that Hilda wasn't a one-trick pony. I thought she was. So for me, my Hilda kind of showed up, in my mind at least, at a very like puddle deep level of research as just a big meanie. This nonstop noise in my head trying to screw with me, trying to keep me from crossing any starting lines or crossing any finish lines, trying to do all of those things. So I decided I needed to get a few more voices because I can't just listen to my Hilda. Gosh. So I did a whole lot of research with my clients, doing all this coaching for a long time, and then went out and did more research and realized, wow, there's a lot more to this broad than I thought. So couple of disclaimers. One, Hilda looks like this because this is what my high school bully looked like. A lot of people are very shocked when I released her that she wasn't, I don't know, some crone or something from a fantasy movie, but she looks like this. And there are, in my research, I found 4 different variations of Hilda. I'm going to go through them really quickly, but you have them on your worksheet there. So basically, Hilda is trying to convince you of one of 4 BS beliefs at any given time. And those BS beliefs are that you can't, you shouldn't, you don't know, or you don't wanna. Okay. And so I like to talk about that in the first person. So we first have I can't Hilda. I can't Hilda is that schoolyard bully, that one that's kind of telling you all the time that you're just a little too special. And that means that you don't have as much capability as everybody else. Like, sure, everybody else can do those things, but you can't. You just don't have what it takes. She's that horrible, mean voice in there. Has anybody heard from I Can't Hilda lately? She shows up sometimes. Then there's her evil stepsister, I shouldn't Hilda. And I shouldn't Hilda is obsessed with you behaving yourself. She's worried about how the world will perceive you. She's trying to convince you of what you should and shouldn't do. That's why she's got that little body language going on. She's kind of like if you're going into high school as a freshman, but your big sister is like the queen of the school going into her senior year, and she's like, don't you embarrass me. That's I shouldn't Hilda, right? Like she wants to make sure you never embarrass yourself, you never make a mistake, kind of like what Brandy was saying earlier, like I want to make sure that everything I do is perfect. And so I shouldn't Hilda can definitely play in there. The next one is I don't know Hilda, who also likes to work in cahoots with these others. But I don't know Hilda is terrified of starting something. And so what she will do is keep researching and convince you that you don't know enough yet to give it a go. You don't know enough yet. You're not ready. So in order to get ready, we should learn some more. We should study some more. We should add some more certifications to our name and our LinkedIn profile before we're allowed to go ahead and actually start. And then when we do start, it's got to be perfect, like shining like the top of the Chrysler building. I see Brandy nodding on that one. She's familiar with the I don't know Hilda. She shows up a heck of a lot for artists. She shows up a heck of a lot for entrepreneurs as well. And then her kind of counterpart is I don't wanna. I want to be clear. It's different from I don't want to. That's consent. That's legit. I don't wanna is trying to convince you that this thing you actually want is not something you feel like doing. So I don't want to Hilda is like the queen of procrastination. She starts stuff all day long, but doesn't finish much. She wants to say, you know what? She shows up kind of like an enabler of like, oh, you got up, you washed your hair this morning. Why don't we just watch some Netflix instead of doing that big scary thing that you really want? Now, why am I telling you about all of these 4 different broads? Well, because it's silly and it's playful. And now we have a language to talk about these things. Once you are kind of steeped in this Hilda silly, I'm telling you, intentionally ridiculous language that we've built, you can start to see which of your Hildas is showing up to the party when you're about to do something that matters. Now, I'll be honest, when I started doing the research for my book and I said, okay, we're going to make this a thing, I was on a mission to kill Hilda. Let's slay the beast. How do we squash her? Because I had met people who claimed they had killed their inner critic. Have you met people like that? Yeah. But I quickly realized that maybe those people exist. That's fine. I'm not for them. But for the rest of us, like Heather said, I'm human. For the rest of us, what we needed was a way to kind of figure out what she was doing. Because once we understand Hilda, we can undermine her. I'm going to say that again. Once you understand her, you can undermine her. And so the goal is not to squash Hilda. And in my opinion, it's not to ignore her either. Our goal is to actually tune into her so that we can shorten the amount of time that we follow her rules. Because once you understand her, you can undermine her, right? And so it's like, oh, hold on a second. I think this is I don't know Hilda. Just by identifying that, you're already getting playful and you're already thinking through this of saying, oh, Hilda's showing up. That's good news. I must be doing something that matters to me. I must be thinking about something that matters to me. Hilda doesn't show up if it doesn't matter, right? If you're just sitting around watching bonbons for the most part, or eating bonbons, watching Netflix, she leaves you alone. But Hilda shows up when it matters to you. And if our goal is to have a way to talk about her, have this silly little language here, and you can say something like, I can't Hilda and I don't want to Hilda got in cahoots today, so I did nothing. And I don't want to do that anymore. So here are some of the different strategies I can tackle so that I know what to do with this voice. It also depersonalizes it a little bit because now it's not like, oh God, I can't believe I had this thought again. You know what? I'm going to attribute that thought to a voice in the back of my head who looks like the chick that Jenny hated in high school. And now I can be playful with that. And it's no longer feels like a disease. It's just a habit of listening to this voice that we've had in our head since birth. So that's a very fast crash course in Hilda 101.
Superb. Very quickly,
Yay.
I wanted to invite folks to add to the chat which of these Hildas resonated the most.
Yeah, really
Right?
great question. And the thing is that's interesting is some people I have found are like this is the Hilda I hear from at all times. And others will say, this is the Hilda I hear from in this life compartment. You know, when it comes to exercise, it's I don't wanna. When it comes to professional, it's I shouldn't, right? And
Yep,
some of us hear from the entire committee. Mhm.
they
I
all
don't
show
know.
up,
I need another
gang up on you.
certification. That's awesome.
Uh, Jenny, one thing I wanted to ask, clarifying question. You were sort of putting the first, and maybe I missed this, being over here on this side. You kind of paired the first two, and then the second, like you made two pairs. What was the distinction? Like, why is there one pair and another?
Great question. Great question. They're not so paired, but typically what we have found is that in any given time, you're probably hearing from an I can't or I shouldn't, and you're probably hearing from a I don't
Yeah.
wanna and I don't know perspective. Not
Hmm.
always. Again, it depends on what you're working on. But I can and I shouldn't is really kind of attacking you as a person.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I don't wanna and I don't know is attacking the project and trying to
Got it.
convince you that you don't have that. Mhm.
Yep. Excellent. I wanted to give folks just about a minute to make some notes to what Jenny was saying about just a little time for you to add some notes to this page and notice if which Hildas resonate, like we said, but also are there certain circumstances where certain Hildas show up? And certainly, if you had any observations or questions about the Hildas, please add them to the chat. So just give you about a minute. Love seeing the observations in the chat. Fantastic. Go ahead and wrap up your current thought. You can always come back to this. And I see that Lisa has a question asking, I can't and I shouldn't Hildas have similarity in insecurity and like being insecure and self-conscious. Are they the same?
They're a little bit different in that I shouldn't Hilda is really the focus on insecurity and self-consciousness in terms of how the rest of the world perceives you, right? So I shouldn't Hilda is very obsessed with how the world sees you. What will other people think? If I even I know a lot of my clients have had the fear of even saying a goal out loud because how will people judge them for having that goal in the first place? Whereas I can't isn't so obsessed with what other people think. It's actually what you think about yourself. It's more like everybody thinks I'm capable. I don't believe it. Right. So I can't Hilda's trying to convince you of the BS belief that you don't have what it takes, period. And that you can't learn it, and it's just not something that you can do, which is really cruel. So you can kind of see there's a almost a two-front war. One's coming from the inside, one's coming from the outside. I hope that clarifies that a little bit.
Um, Kind of building on that because the other two being more about attacking the project, the I don't
Mhm,
want, I don't know, and I don't wanna. What
mhm.
do you have a similar distinction like you just
Yeah, for
described?
that, it's more about the start and the finish, right? So I don't know is terrified of starting things because it has to be perfect and just so. And so before I commit, I need to learn more. I need to learn more. I need to be ready. Like that starting line is the point of no return. I don't want is like, I love starting stuff. It's so fun to start stuff. I'm never finishing anything, right? Like, there you go. Right. I create and create and create, and I have a thousand half started ideas, but I don't take anything all the way across the finish line. And so it's kind of a, there, that's the difference. One is rooted in that perfectionism, and the
Yeah,
other a little more of the procrastination and the need for the muse to show up in order to feel like working on things. That's I don't wanna. And so it's definitely more like a teacher with a ruler and an enabler best friend. You know what I mean? It's a very different kind of energy.
that totally makes sense.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, I can appreciate the I've heard from a lot of folks that kind of sense of the conditions having to be perfect.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if the conditions aren't perfect, clearly I'm not ready, or it isn't. And it's like, I don't, I think about how many, we'll certainly talk more about this, the idea that um, I don't even know what I'm working with until I get started. So you
Yes.
can guess I'm not the I don't know, I'm much more the I don't wanna, where it's like, great, let's get going. Now,
Yeah.
getting
Well,
the reason we
and
have
I see
live events is so I finish things.
totally. Well, and I see somebody in the chat saying, "Oh my God, I'm all for." I write
Yeah.
in my book about how, like, sometimes she shows up kind of like the ghosts of Christmas past, one after another. You know, it's like, okay, I got past I can't, and I got past I don't know, and I got started. And now I feel like, oh God, it got hard. And now I'm worried about what other people are going to think. You like, there's like a,
One
oh,
moment. I think we're okay. Got a thumbs up
okay,
from Heather. She caught the noise.
she's on it.
Go for it.
My screen changed, so I just didn't
Oh,
know what was
okay.
happening. That's why I got all weird.
Okay.
But that's on me. It's probably
No,
just
no.
me. But yeah, so like if you're hearing from all these people, what I want to emphasize here, if you're hearing from Hilda, again, I used to think that meant something was wrong. If you're hearing from Hilda, that's great news. It means you're doing something that matters. It means that you're focused on something that's important to you. I want to celebrate when the broad shows up and do something about it because again, our goal is to shorten the amount of time that this voice wins. And absolutely, it can be a male version as well. One of my favorite names that my male client calls it is Mr. Picklebottom. You name him whatever you want and have that voice be exactly what makes sense to you. Herman is available, whatever you'd like.
Awesome. Um, I saw a question about, well, first I wanted to say this comment of people often say I'm overconfident because I don't have most of the first three. Maybe I'm just stubborn. The great thing is, like, I don't think there's, I don't think there's something there isn't such a thing as overconfident. Somebody could be arrogant,
Yes.
and a pain in the backside, but I'll never, maybe it's because I relate to that. Not gonna, I would never say somebody's overconfident. I think what that is a great sign that um, that when you, like just Jenny was just saying, that it being a sign of something that's important to you, that you just don't have that particular kind of relationship, right? Like it's great
Yeah.
that it's like, oh, that voice isn't very loud or doesn't show up, it shows up less often, or very much to Jenny's point, that that time is very short. So I think that's, great observations
Mhm.
about like a different answer than, some folks might be feeling like, oh my gosh, all four of these are around and they're around all the time. And that's why I'm here. And they're going to tell me what to do and everything's going to be better. We definitely hope. We'll give you
Mhm.
some good tools to improve. Fantastic. And, definitely it's much more about shifting the different ways we shift that relationship.
Yeah.
I saw the
And again, half the
question.
tool is
Go
just
for it, Jenny.
noticing and saying, hey, that's this Hilda.
Yes,
Instantly you've just shifted from like, oh, there's something wrong with me to, oh, that's a thing. I mean, the fact that there's a book on this thing isn't because you're weird. It's because it's common, right? Like these are real things that a lot of people struggle with. So
totally.
uh
I saw the question. I shouldn't is a queen of perfectionism. I don't know you. I don't know. You said when I do it, that it must be perfect. Can you talk more about doing things perfect?
Yeah,
Do you have any more?
perfection comes in a lot of different flavors, right? There's the perfectionism of like, if I build it, it has to be the best, most quality, perfect thing that ever happens. Then there's the perfectionism of, I want to make sure I excel straight out of the gate. So as soon as I hit launch, It has to be an overnight success or it's a failure. Or there's the big one, the one that Mel Robbins often talks about, that perfectionism isn't the desire to be perfect, but it's the desire to, quote, be immune from criticism. Right. So depending on the flavor of perfectionism, it might pop into a few of these different places.
Yeah.
For the most part, when we talk about perfectionism of like what other people think, I shouldn't. Or the perfectionism that comes from you of the project has to be, shine like the top of the Chrysler building. I don't know.
The you just sorry, I'm doing two things, two channels at once. And I just want to say, I noticed the oh my God, I'm all for just a separation. You are not your Hildas. So
Correct.
that's just a friendly correction that they may show up, but they're not you.
Yep.
Um, the oh gosh, I'm not going to worry about it.
Okay.
Go over here. Is there a time you suggest? Oh, I no, I do have it. What you're just saying about, that perception from other people. It was interesting. I was looking up kind of how people most commonly define the inner critic. I think for me, because we talk about, well, you can't remove the inner critic. Like it's just not possible. And certainly um, uh, there is a function to it. So I was kind of looking at like what is the function of the inner critic. And I think fundamentally, in the most positive way, it's about keeping you safe.
Yes.
And I think very often the function of keeping you safe, and these are my words, other people might not agree with this take. For me, a lot of times that making you safe is making you small. It's that thing where it's like, well, all the things of like doing something new or having a new identity or taking a risk, for me, that safety ends up sort of being the nice covering of staying itty bitty, like
And
staying
and when
small.
you think about safety in this context, I can't Hilda wants to keep you safe only doing stuff that you know you can do well because you've already done it. I
Yep.
shouldn't Hilda wants to keep you safe from ever experiencing embarrassment. I don't know
Mm.
Hilda wants to keep you safe from starting something that's not going to be successful. I don't want a Hilda wants to keep you safe from discomfort. Right.
Mm.
So like there's definitely a piece of that safety. Like wanting safety can come from a different thing. And usually it's a combination. I know I'm
Yep.
parsing it out, and I'm parsing it out so you get nerdy about it and silly about it. So you can really look at it and do something about it.
Yep.
Right. Like
Yep.
that's really the key to parsing it out, and having this silly language uh, to address it. But yeah, you're right. You're not going to kill Hilda. She's going to be with you for life, or
Mhm.
Joe or Jack or whatever you name your inner critic.
Yep.
Is going to be with you for life. So let's figure out how to celebrate when this voice drops by, understand it so that you can undermine it.
Awesome. I think what I was seeing a lot when I was looking into this was a lot of the definitions of the inner critic was about keeping you safe and accepted in relationship to social norms. It was interesting how much that specifically came up, which I would say is definitely the I shouldn't. That's definitely about
Definitely.
yeah, in
Hmm.
relationship to other people. Yeah.
Very quick. One of my clients came to me once crying and said, will I ever just silence I shouldn't Hilda and stop caring what other people think? And I said, no. Isn't that great news? Because not for nothing, empathy is caring about what other people think. Hilda
Mhm.
has just found a way to take that strength and turn it into a weapon when you're about to do something that matters. So we just need a different battle. A lot of other coaching colleagues are like, you just need to learn how to stop caring what other people think. I don't want you to do that. That doesn't
Mhm.
seem healthy to me. What I want
Mhm.
you to do is to not let the fear of what other people might think dictate your choices. That's the difference. So instead of fighting the battle of like, I still care what Brandy thinks, I could be like, I care what Brandy thinks, and I'm making these decisions. Does that speak to everybody? So it's
You have,
about
you
kind
have
of
me nodding.
shifting that. Yeah. I'm sorry.
I, I said you have me nodding, and often I say at that point, if you care what other people think, you got to find new people. You got to find your people, because if you're really excited about doing something and that voice is telling you what is this person going to think, it's like find better people, find the weirdos.
Mm-hmm.
Should only speak for myself. There was a question around: are there times you suggest turning up Hilda? Oh, first, someone asking for the book title. So show us the cover and
Yep.
say the whole full
Um,
name for us, please.
So Hilda, it's Hilda, tackle your inner naysayer, get out of your own way, and unleash your badassery. If you go to Amazon and search for Hilda and Coach Jenny with an IE, you will find it, and it's in paperback, ebook, and Audible. I will read the book to you. I'm
Aw,
hysterical at 3 times speed. Thank you so much, Jen. I appreciate that.
awesome.
Uh,
And then there was that question. Are there times to turn up the inner critic?
Times to turn
Anything
her
come? Yeah, like make her even more present.
Yeah, sometimes I'll have clients say, I'm feeling really uncomfortable because Hilda's kind of quiet right now. What does that
Oh,
mean about me? Have you had that experience of like, oh, I might be onto something? Because sometimes it's kind of like, oh crap, this is moving faster than I'm comfortable with. Why isn't she slowing me down? And so maybe it is a way to say, okay, let's test it. Let's test the waters. And you know what your normal Hilda is in this kind of situation. Once you've done some of this work, you can be like, you know what? Typically here, I don't know, Hilda would try to convince me that I need to learn a little bit more, ask 7 more opinions before I jump into something. And I could do that. And this time I'm choosing not to. I'm scared, but less scared than I used to be. And that's where you can kind of see that growth. Again, we're not trying to squash Hilda, and we're not handing her a microphone. I don't see a good reason for that either. But we do want to shorten the amount of time that she is influencing your decisions and choices.
excellent. And that, as you were describing that, how she shows up when things are important, that reminds me a lot of Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art. I don't know how many folks know that book, but he
Mm.
sort of talks about his way of talking. He talks about resistance. And anytime you're leveling up and you're creating something new and something important, it's met with resistance. So or I should say, you're going up and the resistance is meeting you, right? So a little bit more abstract than that inner
Yep.
critic being personified, same principle. And he says that it's a great sign when it shows up because it says you're in the video game of life, you're moving up to the next level, and that it really, the amount of resistance you feel is equal to how much you're progressing, like what you're trying to do. And the favorite part of this, and I think it goes to what you're saying, is just accept it as a force of nature, like gravity. It's like just accept you have Hildas and they have different things they're trying to tell you. And like you said, it's about shortening that time that they're in the driver's seat, that they're winning out or influencing your decisions, like you said.
Absolutely. The most ambitious people I know have a louder Hilda than the least ambitious people I know, right? The most creative people I know have a louder Hilda than the less creative people, right? You guys are nodding your heads. You all know somebody who doesn't have a very loud Hilda. You probably don't spend a whole lot of time with that person, right? They're not that exciting. They're not doing cool things. And so it's a really fun tool to kind of recognize that this is good news. It's not a moral failing that you have self-doubt or perfectionism or procrastination, that you procrastinate sometimes, or sometimes you second guess yourself. Those are not moral failings. Those are part of being ambitious and creative and excited.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. I would
Thank you.
absolutely love some jazz hands for Jenny. Hopefully Jenny can see the see the gallery. I love it.
That's
Oh, so
beautiful.
good.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenny. And certainly we can come back to questions towards the end. So thank you. Thank you. The best. And next, the book I just mentioned was The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Fantastic. Now, next, I think this probably stirred up a lot of different ideas and as Jenny walked us through these 4 types, how they related to each other, what their qualities are. I'm sure your brain is buzzing with sort of like, I was gonna say like triangulating or like thinking about, oh, how much does this relate? How do my inner critics sound like this one or not like this? Or like the gender, how does it show up? Does it have a name? All that good stuff. That's exactly what we're doing next, is if your brain is full of all this thinking about the particular qualities, the uniqueness of your inner critic, we now have space to look at that. And again, it's very much about, for me, I think a whole lot of this is that could have a different experience, but this idea of the inner critic feeling so internal and so present that it reminds me of, thankfully, this is not the relationship, but with my sister. But think about if you have I often think about family of origin, where it could be a past romantic partner, it could be a friend, it could be a coworker, that kind of relationship where like they push your buttons and you're like, I know they're going to do that. Like, why are they pushing that? Like, how can they find that button and push it so easily? Right. Or that thing where you like it's just something, a relationship that's become so ingrained, so wired, and it happens so fast. And you're like, I don't want this to be this. Is it making sense? Am I making some kind of sense over here? Not seeing any fast hands, so maybe I'm not. That's okay.
No, I want to, if you don't mind, I
Yeah,
want to add, as you were saying,
please.
and I think that Jenny spoke to this just a moment ago about how it feels like our inner critic can sometimes build tolerance just slightly more than we can. So it's like they're always
Interesting.
like a step ahead, or they're always like what you're talking about. I feel like, yeah, they're always going to show up, and they're always going to like be tricky. So I
Yep.
like that
Yep.
I like that Jenny was talking about undermining Hilda,
Yes. Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
like to
I
hold
think
hands with my Hilda, but I can see where
excellent.
undermining is necessary because it's sneaky,
Yeah, for sure.
super
For sure.
sneaky.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that just generally the distinction of we're carrying around this character, this part of ourselves all the time, and it can happen so fast. So next, we're going to take a closer look, shine some light on the inner critic. So I want you to go ahead and grab that third page in the PDF, which was intentionally left blank. I think most folks should have a pen nearby. Just go ahead and grab a pen and grab page 3. If you didn't have the printout, just grab a blank sheet of paper because clearly this is almost entirely blank. And very simply, first thing I want you to do is just fold it in half this way. So it's like not the long way, but this way. So just go ahead and take your piece of paper, fold it in half. And next, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. I know we're a lot of visualizers and we're busy writing things down, but just for a few moments, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. It's a safe place. No one's going to look at you funny with your eyes closed. You're all good. And I just want you to just right now notice the sensations in your body. Take a few deep breaths. Take a drink of water if it's nearby. Notice the sensations in your body. At this moment, notice, is your inner critic showing up right now? Or do you feel like you have some distance from your inner critic? And I want you to locate where the inner critic lives. For some folks, it may, like I had just described, for some folks, it may feel like it is internal, like it has a very specific place in your body. For other folks, it might be in relationship to you outside your body. But just take a few moments and notice when that inner critic shows up, where are they? And certainly, if that inner critic shows up inside, well, and when that inner critic shows up, whether it's inside of you, around you, notice what are the physical sensations that come up. And next, I want you to invite you to gently open your eyes. And on the left side of the page, just the left side, leave the right side blank for now. And then I'm going to invite you to draw sort of your current relationship of you and your inner critic. And when I say draw, that doesn't have to be scary. There's no, this is not the art class and the gold stars, anything like that. Whatever feels right to you, have some kind of representation of your current relationship with you and your inner critic. And certainly if it shows up more abstractly, it doesn't feel like in you that you can certainly use whatever words. This is a combination. Use words, use shapes, lines, images, anything that helps represent that current relationship to that inner critic. And I'll just give you a few ideas of some details. Like, for instance, does the inner critic have a name? Does the inner critic have a certain identity? For instance, gender. Does it have a very specific identity, maybe related to a human you know? It's the question was, why is it important to name it? It isn't. Just an invitation that if your inner critic has a name, you can capture it. Through all of this, if it doesn't resonate, just let it go. This is purely just some prompts to help you think through that relationship. Where is this inner critic in relationship to you? Does it feel internal? And if it feels internal, is it located in a certain part of your body? If it's external, notice, where is it in relationship to you? Is it nearby? Is it far away? Does that inner critic have a certain size or shape? Does the inner critic have a certain age? Somebody just commented their inner critic's very young. Does that inner critic have an age? Does it have a certain posture? Does it have a certain way it moves? Notice, does the inner critic have a certain kind of voice? Do you actually hear the inner critic's voice? If so, is there anything around the quality of their voice or how they speak that you notice in particular? Could certainly be your voice, but just an opportunity to characterize that inner critic. Then I invite you to write down, what are some of those specific things that your inner critic tells you? We all know there's a lot of repetition, some greatest hits. So go ahead and write down some of those messages your inner critic tells you. It's great to see some of the observations in the chat. If you feel comfortable, feel free to add any observations you'd like to share in the chat. I would invite you just to wrap up this part, this left side of the page, or if you did the right side, it's fine. I didn't specify. This side of the page. You can always come back to it later if it's useful. And I'd love to hear just one or two, or see in the chat, one or two words of how you're feeling. Just what are you noticing about having spent just those few minutes taking that closer look at your inner critic? Excellent. I appreciate these observations, feeling tight or sad, or feeling peaceful that their inner critic's taking a nap. This evasive thing is about to be exposed, like the spotlight is turned, right? A lot of remembering old criticisms, a sense of release or edgy. She has more than one appearance or voice for me. That's great distinction to notice that she shows up different ways at different times. They're becoming less annoying, fearful, and actually that they're nice people, just misguided. That's some great compassion for your inner critic. Like, yeah, they got something to say. Disconcerted, so that like sense of unease, anger, curious, pensive. Nice to meet this part of me, but also slightly tired. Fantastic. Yeah, there's absolutely no right way to feel in this moment. It's just a chance to think about, just notice what you're feeling right now, whether it's calm, whether it's more anxious, all good. And next, I want to invite you to move to the other side of the page. I'm going to very simply put up a timer for about 3 minutes. And I want to invite you to write. So we just spent some time looking at kind of the current state of your relationship with your inner critic, shining that light, looking at some of those details. On the right side of the page, I'd love for you to write down what you would like your relationship to your inner critic to be. Now, if it turns out you have a great relationship already, it could look just like the other side. That's perfectly fine. And if you're here because you want to shift that relationship, this is a little bit of time and space to write out for yourself what kind of shift would you like to see. It could be different, a different sense of where it is in your body, a different sense of where it is inside of you, outside of you, a distance. Certainly could be anything about sort of talking back to that inner critic. So now I'm going to put up a timer and just invite you to take a little time to make those notes and drawings for yourself. Can I get a thumbs, can I get a thumbs up if you feel like you've had enough time? Can I get a full hands up if you feel like you need a little, okay, see lots of thumbs up. Excellent. So I just want to invite you to notice now, take a moment, perhaps close your eyes. And I know I'm the voice behind the timer here. There we go. Just take a few moments to notice what you feel like. What do you notice in your body right now? Your emotions, your physical sensations. And if you'd like to share in the chat, feel free. Just a couple words on how you're feeling now. Great to hear some observations. I'm seeing a lot of lightness and calm. And by all means, if this maybe even made you feel more tense or felt the earlier emotions more intensely, amped up, no problem. I do hope that you can come back to this drawing, think about what you captured here now, add to it, anything that's useful to you. I appreciate the being annoyed by the white cursor poking me in the face. Yeah, every so often, just the cursor decides it needs to be near me on the screen. Excellent. So noticing the tenseness move from my jaw to my throat. Interesting to notice that shift, right? I think that's really interesting information. Like, oh, it's moving. All right, that tells me something. Yeah, saying it's more tense for me, confrontational. I appreciate there was this earlier comment of that idea of my inner critic is mostly scared and reactive because of that. I think there is, when we don't just sort of believe the inner critic and what they're saying to us, and we start to shift that relationship, of course, the inner critic's going to be on edge, like feeling defensive, like, wait a second, I've always been in control here. When I show up and I say what I need to say, Brandy listens. And now she's not listening. And that's scary. So I think that's a great observation, noticing that they might be on the defensive instead of putting us on the defensive all the time. Yep. Excellent. Excellent. So next, I would love to hand it to Heather for our third set of tools. I welcome you to come back to these drawings, redraw these drawings, anything that's useful to you. And Heather, please share with us
Yay.
your
Well,
way
thank
of
you so much,
your
Brandy.
perspective
I
on the inner
love
critic.
this. Yeah. Excellent. So thank you, everybody. So I want to talk a little bit about how to stay in relationship and build resilience with your inner critic. So now you can go to the very next page, page 4, I believe it is, where there's the little green. It's green on your handout. Mine is printed out black and white, but this is the handout that we're looking for here. And I just want to acknowledge that the stories that we tell ourselves sometimes seem to never go away. Like, yeah, we're not going to banish the inner critic. So what do we do with those stories so that we can live with them? Now, many of you know that I am an appreciative inquiry facilitator, and the idea of working with a modality based in positive psychology might conjure up some fear around toxic positivity. But I'm also an appreciative resilience facilitator, which means I have learned to sit with my own despair so that I may build resilience to what my inner critic tells me. And when I took the training, my teachers encouraged me to make this work my own, carve out my niche, and to customize it to meet the needs of those who may need it. So I adopted what's called the ALIVE model to serve as a needs assessment to learn the truth behind those stories that my inner critic was telling me. So you'll notice that the first letter of each of these words that are handwritten spells out alive. And now, while there are 5 questions on the sheet, we're only going to focus on 3 of them: appreciation, inquiry, and venture. And while all three questions are important, you can use this handout as a guide to conduct this needs assessment for your future again and again and again. So, but I would like to guide you just through this quick exercise. And I love where Brandy put us into our body so that we can start feeling that. So now that you've got your handout, or if you just have a piece of paper, that's fine, because I'm going to have you doing some free writing. You can put your pencil down for now, and we'll come back to it and this worksheet or your piece of paper in just a moment. And what I'd like you to do is to settle even deeper into your body by adjusting yourself, making sure that your feet are flat against the floor or propped up on something comfortable. I have a little cushion under my feet. And this is all about comfort. So please make the adjustments you need in order to be at ease. And notice your breath. And when you breathe in from that belly and make sure that your out breath is longer than your in breath. Because when we breathe in and then breathe out longer, say breathing in to the count of 5 or 6, and breathing out in the count of 7 or 9, what that does is it slows down your heart rate and it engages the parasympathetic nervous system. Now I want you to notice the weight of your body being held confidently by the seat or the chair that you're sitting in. And you may either close your eyes or gently rest them on an object in front of you. And I'm going to read you a few questions, and I just want you to notice where your attention goes. If there is one question that piques your interest, go there. And if it's the first or second question, if it doesn't, that's okay. Wait for the third. And if you feel nothing, that's okay too. I'm going to give you an opportunity in just a moment to reflect on these questions again and free write about them soon. But for now, I just want you to focus on listening to my words and noticing what comes up. All right. And so first, I'd like you to think about what you need in order to feel that your efforts are valued and appreciated. And when you feel your needs being met, notice, how does that feel in your body? And then if you notice when that inner critic arrives, what comes up? What does that feel like? And what questions can you ask to get clarity and understanding? Now, this question is for you, not your inner critic. Tap into your own inner wisdom. What questions can you ask to get clarity and understanding for whatever that inner critic is bringing up? And then finally, if you get stuck, or if you make a mistake, or if you feel that you failed, what strengths and skill sets will you pull from to brave the storm? And if you need to, breathe into what you love about yourself or what you appreciate about yourself. So now you can open your eyes and go ahead and grab your pen or pencil and start free writing about something that just came up. And I'll give you 3 minutes to write about what just came up. Just write freely. It doesn't have to make sense. I'll give you a couple additional minutes in just a moment. So I want you to free write now. We can edit later. But for now, let's just free write for the next 3 minutes.
you're muted, Heather.
I just said something really brilliant and you all missed it. I'm really sorry about that.
Say it again. Say it
Just
again.
kidding. So great. So let me just stop sharing really quick. So thank you all for doing that. Now what I'd like you to do is take the next 2 minutes and reflect on what you wrote and give yourself this time to then edit, refine that. And maybe you might just circle a few words, what gives you some energy. What's the essence of what you just wrote? Some of you may have written a lot. Some of you might have had writer's block for a moment, but take the next 2 minutes to edit and refine those initial thoughts. Okay, so let's take 2 minutes to do that. Excellent. Excellent. So now, if you feel brave and if you're willing to share, you may share what you wrote either by unmuting, I'm sorry, and sharing, or typing it in the chat. And we don't have to go in order. We can answer any question at any time. So what I'd like to do is to show you what I have on my screen here. Oops, my apologies. And I know some of you may be used to me being high tech, but for some reason, my Zoom didn't want to connect to my iPad today. So you're going to see me working analog and digital at the same time. And so the 3 questions we're really focused on here is appreciate, inquire, and venture. And see, even I can make mistakes. And my inner critic came in and said, hey, you did it wrong. That's fine. So if you were to reflect back on what you wrote, what might be some things that you would be willing to share around appreciate, inquire, or venture? Feel free to unmute or you can share it in the chat. Okay, Elizabeth is saying it all comes down to reconnecting with my purpose. So where did that land for you?
I kind of hate to break the silence, but I'll talk.
Yeah, okay.
Mine came down to inquire, which is just to say, is this really true? You know, when I hear the critic, you know, what's the evidence here? Do I really suck? Not everybody thinks so. It might not be true.
That's fantastic. And I love that, because what happens in your body after you ask that? Or what do you feel? Or what does the inner critic say? What happens next?
Yeah, I can relax a little and maybe
Yeah.
even laugh.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. Is this really true? That's an excellent question. I've heard that before, and I've heard it from Byron Katie. Do you know who that is? That might be someone interesting to
I
look
do know
into.
who that is.
Yeah, Byron Katie asked the same question. Is this true? And that's an excellent question to ask. Yeah. Okay. So appreciate creating habitats of kindness. Oh my gosh, we need more of that in our life. Habitats of kindness. So we appreciate this as something that we either do for others or that we need. We all kind of need that. So that's fantastic. Great. For inquire, ask the cat. I'm guessing the cat is probably your inner critic. Why must my art creativity always have a dollar value attached? Art has intrinsic value unrelated to money, right? Why does it have to have a dollar? And I like that you went right into the next thing. Art has intrinsic value already. So when we think about the venturing, when we get stuck and we start to flip that or go to the next thing, this might not be a strength or a skill set, but there's a fact, and that is art has intrinsic value. Great. Love that. And if anybody wants to, I know that you spelled it for me in the chat, but I'm having a hard time writing and spelling. If anybody wants to unmute, feel free to do that as well. Great. Claire is saying that she needs positive feedback. And good communication. That's how she knows that her work is being appreciated. Great. Yeah, thank you, Jenny, for putting that in the chat. Byron Katie, the work. Love, safety. And sometimes we don't get this the first time we try this. So I hope I'm introducing you to a process that you can come back to again and again. So appreciate, I'm hearing you say that you need to learn how to value yourself more and put that into practice. You might say, you might bring that into inquire and say, how can I? Or how might I? And then you can fill in the blank. Right? Because we're looking for clarity when it comes to the inquiry. Yeah, I love this. Kid is saying exercise. Sometimes we just know what we need to do. Sometimes it needs to be a physical thing. It could be working out really hard. It could be taking a quick jaunt around the block. Yeah. So maybe you have compassion. Maybe you have compassion for others, and maybe you can turn that on to yourself. Excellent. Yeah. Encouragement to brave the storm. I go back to my drawing of my talents. That's right. So this is really where we're looking for our strengths. Let's remind ourselves. And when we do that, when we focus on our strengths, we tend to soften that a bit. All right. Lots in the chat. Oh, you're making me read. I have to say, I've never done this in silence before. I've always had people speaking, but this is great to see everyone, what everyone's writing. Yeah, mentor others. Oh, that's fantastic. Take what you know, take your strength and share that with others. And again, you'll notice that there's a bit of a cycle that's happening here, and we can keep going through it. We can keep adding to it. And what happens is we start at appreciate, and it goes in a circle. We certainly don't have to answer it this way, but you can go through this process several times and it can start over and over and over. Venture is strengths. It should not be appreciation. That's excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit to some of the questions that are here now, because I think we can do that. I think you kind of get the idea of what this process is like, and you have this worksheet you can go back to again and again and again. And yes, a lot of these things are going to feel sort of the same. The reason why I didn't have you go to love is because some people can't go there. They can't go right to it. They don't love themselves yet fully. And so I wanted to talk about appreciation in terms of what you're doing. But when it comes to love, it's about, who are you? What do you love about yourself? What do you love about that? And when you asked about venture is strengths, it should not be appreciation. Yeah, I mean, these are things that you want to be appreciative for, but we want to refer when things get tough, when we're in the thick of it, or when there's a storm, we want to go back and think about, what are our strengths? What's going to get me through this, right? All right. So, Amy, I'd love for you to kind of go a little bit deeper in this. I don't think I fully understood your question. You said you'd love to hear my thoughts about the role and need for positive feedback. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, well, one person mentioned wanting feedback, and there's always a kind of like, oh yeah, I really love it, get my likes on Instagram, or have a client be really happy with my work. And yet that's depending on others.
Right.
And yet we're interdependent human beings. To some degree, we need to have, positive feedback. But then there's also this idea, the Ayn Rand kind of thing, like you should get it from within and you shouldn't need to depend on other people. So,
right.
Yeah. So I'd like to hear your thoughts about it all.
Yeah. So this is me taking off my coaching hat, my facilitator hat, and putting on my human hat for a moment. And I am one of those people that for a very long time, I needed other people to tell me what I was doing was good. I needed that external. And I learned how to get the internal need met. And this is personal, but that came from me understanding that I needed to reparent myself. Like my parents weren't giving me what I needed, so I needed to learn how to reparent myself. And in that process, I realized I got what I need. I don't need somebody else's approval. So that was a really deep process for me. However, I have friends that literally say, can you just tell me how great I am again? And I can show up as their cheerleader and I can tell them how wonderful they are. And I'm happy to do it. And they feel great. And I think it was Jenny that told me, you're just combing their hair, right? You're just combing their hair. You're just making them feel good. And I love that. And some people need that. And some people say, okay, now for me, if someone says, oh, you're great, and they're gushing, I'm like, okay, but can you tell me something that's going to be really useful to me? Here's what I want to know. And this is where we can go back to that inquire and say, okay, I'm getting a lot of fluff here and I kind of need some better feedback. So I might ask myself, what do I need to ask this person in order to get what I need? And so I would go back, if I needed feedback from someone and they were just combing my hair, I would say, what would be really valuable to me is tell me if, and the inquire, I'm going to go to that inquire piece, and it might even come up from the appreciation. Like, what do I want to be appreciative for? My question might be rooted in that appreciation. So it feels like I'm skipping around a lot, and it's because this is all really interrelated. That's why I didn't want anybody to feel like we had to go in an order. But you'll notice that if you go in this, almost it's a circle, but like a spiral, you'll get deeper and deeper with that process. Anyone else, any questions? There was so much in the chat. I can't read it all, but I'm wondering if anybody has anything that stood out they want to unmute.
Heather, can you talk a little bit more about what venture means?
Yes. So think of yourself of having an adventure. I like to call it a great adventure when things are going awful, like I'm having an epic adventure. So when things are getting a little rough, like you're on a boat and the sea is wavy, or like I say, you're in a thicket, you're in it. What are you going to do to get out of it? But rather than think about how to get out of it, what are my strengths? What are my skill sets? Ooh, I've been here before. What did I do that worked? Does that help? Yeah, because that's the deep part. That's the despair part, is when we're in that place. How am I going to venture into it rather than trying to hop out of my body or hop out of the situation?
And
Yeah.
what I like about the word venture is that sense of movement.
Yes, exactly.
That's, yeah.
This whole thing is a movement. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was going to
Thank you.
connect before my batteries had terrible timing.
Yeah.
The idea that positive feedback seems less real than the negativity from my inner critic. I need to flip that. So I want to
Yeah.
acknowledge that observation. I think a couple things happening, like the power of the voice inside of us can feel so much more present and so much
Oh,
louder
yeah.
than that wonderful human outside of us giving us that positive feedback, right?
Yeah.
And I think what I love about appreciative inquiry, and for folks, like this could feel like a really strange muscle you're moving, right?
Yes.
Like a whole lot of us have far more experience with the inner critic, being self-critical, being hard on ourselves. I know we're a lot of folks who are high achievers. One of the things I realized about my community is we are incredibly kind to other people and
Yeah.
so hard on ourselves. So does anyone
That's
relate
right.
to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
suck a little bit of this, and yeah. So it might feel like a very strange muscle that doesn't move very easily, but happily, it's a practice. So happily, it's something that that cultivating that the practice, using this process again, all of these tools is what
Mhm.
helps us shift and get more and more comfortable and help that that person giving us that feedback help amplify their voice. And I appreciate what Heather was saying about no, can you give me something useful, right? So often we focus on, tell me the thing I can improve, because we are the type of folks who are problem solvers and improvers and always looking to refine and be better. And there's really good information in the positive feedback. I
Yeah.
know it is harder to hear, but there is actually really great validation and reinforcement
It
that
can
help
be.
that is information
And
as well.
I love that you said that this is a practice and it's also a process. So we've already acknowledged that the inner critic's not going to go away. So we have to keep practicing and then find your process. I mean, you could use this to journal every day, once a week, whenever you need it, but you may go into the inquire and say, what is like a question that I need to keep asking myself to be in relationship with that inner critic? And then you'll notice that that question is going to start changing. It's going to be like, oh, the inner critic's getting sneaky. I got to come up with a new question to find out what do I need in order to get through this. Yeah, thank you so much.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to share very much to that idea of practice, repetition, practice, muscles getting stronger, getting easier to use. This is, the way I kind of picture for me, my inner critic is, like I said, do 3 times more than anybody else and do it perfectly. But my inner critic lives right behind my left ear. Like it's very specific, and I feel like it feels like a scribble. And I don't think it's any mystery why it's on the left side behind my left ear, right between my brain and my drawing hand. So this is where the magic happens. This is left-handed. So for me, I think that practice of the more you can like notice it's there, but do it anyway, very much connected to the feel the fear, but do it anyway. It's the, okay, I hear you. And you are not going to stop me from still doing what I want to do. But that takes practice. So I feel like the more that I just use the very simple thing of getting stuff out is that first step, making it tangible, using these different tools that we've talked about in the session of, noticing. I love that Jenny gave us really great language and options, like lots of really good details around qualities of these possible inner critics, these Hildas. I hope that I helped you feel where the inner critic lives in your body, right? And Heather gave us this really great process, these questions to appreciate what's coming up and take a closer look at it. And I do notice, Jenny, you wanted to share something about comeback. Will you tell us what that is? You
Yeah.
kind of
So
bookmarked
one
that
thing that
idea.
I neglected to share is, we figure out that our Hilda is being super loud and what message is she saying? And then we can think about, okay, is that I can or I shouldn't, and whatever. And that's really helpful. But with practice, having a comeback to some of that negativity can make a big difference. And it takes some practice to find a comeback that is effective for you. It's going to be different for everybody. But when you get some I can't Hildaism, as I call it, like, who do you think you are? My favorite response to that is to answer the question. well, let me tell you who I am. You know what I mean? And be really direct with it. Some people need some sass, like, oh, they're all going to laugh at you. And then my head goes to that old movie. They're all going to laugh at you, and then then it's playful. So having whatever comebacks makes sense, and arming yourself with some comebacks to your inner Hilda puts you in a really strong place. It's different than an affirmation. It actually creates this little silly conversation with yourself that can be incredibly valuable. So I would encourage you to add some of what you were learning from both Heather and from Brandy that you could turn into some comebacks.
You kind of created the perfect segue to page 5 in the PDF. So
Yay.
before we go, yeah, right. Before we go, I just wanted to give folks just a couple minutes to use page 5 to write down on the left side of the page, there's 3 gems shapes. So I want to encourage you to take a moment to pull out 3 gems, three insights, 3 nuggets of good stuff that you want to keep in your pocket and carry forward from the session. And very much to what Jenny just said, when that inner critic shows up, I've given you on the right side of the page 3 speech bubbles. What do you say to your inner critic? Just what would be that response? All right. So I'll just put up a minute on the screen for you. Great. Can you an example? An example of what you might say to the inner critic could be, "Hey, buddy." It could be as simple as just acknowledging their entrance, like noticing that they've shown up. Oh, great. Jenny has, "Aw, Hilda, welcome back. I know you're scared, darling, but we're doing this. Get on board or go get coffee." Fantastic. I know that wasn't enough time. You can always come back to this page. If anyone would like to share a gem or something a new thing they will say to their inner critic, feel free to add it to the chat. And I certainly appreciate everyone's time and attention. It's always such an absolute thrill to get to see. I love seeing faces. I love seeing the nods in the gallery, and I also absolutely appreciate how much I see the tops of your heads because you're doing really fantastic work in this time together. And I wanted to add Heather. Welcome, Heather. Any last thoughts from Jenny and Heather? Just about this before we share where folks can find us?
Go ahead, Heather.
I was going to plug Jenny. So, and the reason being is because when they both asked me to be a part of this, I was like, yeah, I got my own thing. And yeah, I do this every once in a while. And I just want to encourage everyone, again, this is a practice. Use bits, parts, or all of these tools as you can, and keep loving on yourself. And because your inner critic wants to be a part of that, and it might just be feeling a little rejected too. So yeah, I'd say, and I put my my conversation with my inner critic in the chat. So
Ooh, excellent. I think yeah, I think for anyone this has stirred up some stuff, that's perfectly natural. I do hope wherever you are in your day and location, you can just be gentle with yourself and just notice if this poked at some bruises, or if you're feeling super energized, fantastic. No right
Yeah.
answers. And yeah, Jenny, go
I'm
for
so
it.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
I
no,
hope that you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. right? It's not special to me. And look at all of these amazing humans that showed up to be part of this conversation. And you feel like, oh, okay, so this is normal. This is what happens when you're doing things that matter. Not this is something that's wrong with you. This is something that's great about you. And now we just need to figure out, take what you like, leave what you don't from today's conversation so that you can do something about this.
Absolutely. And this will go online. Please point people towards this. Please come back to these tools yourselves. I think something that's so important, anytime I hear over and over again when somebody, because I work in workshops all the time where people are learning about new practices, new processes, new tools, is so often we learn a new tool. And then if we aren't using it again and again and again, we aren't using that tool every day, or we're not using it perfectly, again, that inner critic says, what are you doing? You failed. Now, there's never, ever, ever one single tool. Think about the toolbox, right? We have all sorts of different tools in our toolbox. So today, you added a few tools to this toolbox. And really, they're there waiting for you anytime you need them. So if you feel like one of these tools will be useful, pull it out, use it in good health, and just know that they're there for you, that you've added more tools to your toolbox. I hope you absolutely continue to do so. And so everly so completely thankful, grateful, thrilled both for Heather and Jenny going on this adventure with me today and to see all of you in the gallery. And thank you so much for your attention and hope to see you next time.